We begin with sentencing day for the woman who wrote a children's book about grief after her husband died and then was found guilty of poisoning him. As Jim Murray reports today, she's learning her fate.
A children's book. That's what she was selling. A small illustrated picture book, pastel colors, soft drawings, designed to help little kids understand death, to help them grieve, to help them heal. She went on local television to talk about it. She smiled warmly into the camera. She described how she wrote every page alongside her 3 young boys after they lost their father. She said it brought her a little peace. But here's what the cameras didn't know. Here's what the audience didn't know. Here's what those little boys didn't know. According to prosecutors, and now, according to a jury of her peers, Kouri Richins didn't just survive her husband's death. She caused it. Deliberately, methodically, and with a substance so lethal that the medical examiner found 5 times the fatal dose in Eric Richins' bloodstream when they cut him open on that cold Utah morning in March 2022. The drug was fentanyl, the delivery method, his bedtime drink. The woman who handed it to him, his wife of 9 years. This is the story of Eric Richins, a devoted father, a hard-working man who built something from nothing with his bare hands, a man who trusted the wrong person with his life. And this is the story of how his death became a children's book, a murder trial, and ultimately a life sentence without parole. Stay with me, because this one is unlike anything you've heard before.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
It all began on March 4th, 2022, with a pre-dawn call to 911.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened. No, I don't know. I just came in. I was sleeping with my kids.
Kouri Richins told the dispatcher she'd woken up to find her husband Eric not breathing.
He's just cold. Who's cold? My husband.
First responders arrived at the house on Willow Court 10 minutes later.
What's your first name? So what happened today?
I don't know. He was just fine. We were fine.
Kouri told deputies she had already tried CPR. Paramedics continued those life-saving efforts.
He's had 2 Eppies in their hand.
Utah, a quiet mountain town about 40 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. Nice home, working parents, 3 little kids running around. Eric had no known history of drug use, not recreational, not prescription, not illicit, nothing. He was not a man who dabbled. He was not a man living on the edge. He was a man who trusted his wife to hand him a drink at the end of the night. And that trust, that simple, ordinary marital trust, is what killed him. What his family would later reveal during the sentencing hearing broke something in the courtroom. His sister stood up and said, "He was taken from my dad, my sister, his nieces, his friends, our community, and worst of all, from his 3 amazing sons." Eric Richins deserved better. His boys deserved better. Remember that as this story unfolds. March 3rd, 2022, a Wednesday evening. Kouri Richins told investigators she had good news to celebrate. She said she just closed on a property for her house-flipping business. She went upstairs to their bedroom and she brought cocktails. Moscow Mules. She handed one to Eric. He drank it in bed. At some point during the night, Kouri left the room. She told police she heard one of their children having a nightmare and went to comfort him. She said she left her phone behind on the charger. That detail would come back to haunt her. Because phone data, cold, unfeeling, irrefutable phone data, would later show that her device had been actively used during that window. Messages were sent, and then those messages were deleted. Early in the morning of March 4th, 2022, just after 3 a.m., Kouri Richins called 911. She said she'd come back to the bedroom and found her husband unresponsive. When first responders arrived at the Richins home, Eric was already gone. They declared him dead at the scene. At first, Kouri offered an explanation. She suggested Eric might have eaten a THC gummy before bed, the kind he sometimes kept on his nightstand. She thought maybe, she said, it had been laced with something. But the medical examiner wasn't buying it. The autopsy told a different story. Eric Richins had not died from any natural cause. There was no fatal heart disease, no stroke, no aneurysm. He had been poisoned. The toxicology screen found fentanyl, not a trace, not a therapeutic dose, 5 times the lethal amount surging through his bloodstream, and critically, the fentanyl was illicit, street grade, not pharmaceutical, and it had been ingested orally. The only people in that house that night were Kouri, Eric, and their 3 sleeping children. According to CBS News, investigators quickly began finding holes in Kouri's account. The phone data, a second iPhone discovered hidden in her bedside drawer, a story that kept shifting, first the gummies, then doubt, then silence. The investigation had begun, and it would take over a year before the full picture came into focus. But when it did, it was devastating. Here's where you need to pay attention. Because what prosecutors uncovered wasn't just a crime, it was a web, years in the making, layer upon layer of debt, deception, desire, and desperation. Let's start with the money. Kouri Richins had built a reputation as a successful real estate investor. She flipped houses. She ran K. Richins Realty LLC. Friends described her as driven, talented, sharp, but according to CBS News and court testimony, behind that polished image was a business drowning in debt. By March 2022, the very month Eric died, a forensic accountant testified that Kouri was $7.5 million in the hole. $7.5 million. And Eric's estate on the day of his death was worth approximately $5 million. His life was insured for more than $2.2 million through multiple policies. Here's where it gets darker. According to A&E Crime and CBS News reporting on court documents, as far back as 2019, prosecutors alleged Kouri had been quietly stealing from her husband. Without his knowledge, she used a fraudulent power of attorney to take out a $250,000 home equity line of credit and withdrew all of it. Eric found out, or at least he began to suspect. In October 2020, he quietly met with an estate planning attorney. He told her he had 2 goals: protect himself from his wife's ongoing financial misconduct and protect his sons. He created the Eric Richins Living Trust, naming his sister Katie as trustee, not Kouri. He transferred his business interest into that trust. He removed Kouri as beneficiary on his $500,000 life insurance policy. Kouri knew none of this. She wouldn't find out until after he was dead. In January 2022, just weeks before Eric's death, Kouri took out a new life insurance policy on her husband, naming herself the sole beneficiary. Prosecutors alleged she forged his signature on the application. That policy was added to the $2.2 million already in play. And around the same time, she was acquiring fentanyl. Her housekeeper, Carmen Lorber, the prosecution's key witness, testified at trial that Kouri asked her to procure drugs in early 2022. First, something mild, then something stronger. Eventually, Lorber testified she purchased fentanyl pills for Kouri multiple times. But there's one more element that prosecutors called crucial. The affair. Kouri Richins had been involved in a long-running relationship with a man named Robert Josh Grossman. He testified at trial. He became emotional on the stand as message after message scrolled across the courtroom screen, texts filled with longing, with plans, with declarations. Just 2 weeks before Eric's death, Kouri sent Grossman this: "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect." And weeks before that, prosecutors say she told a friend she felt trapped in her marriage and that it would just be better if her husband were dead. As Summit County Chief Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth told the jury in closing arguments, according to NPR, she wanted to leave Eric Richins, but she did not want to leave his money. The motive was not a mystery. The evidence said it plainly. Money, love, escape, and a husband who had quietly begun to protect himself, but not quite in time. Now the book. About a year after Eric Richins died, Kouri self-published a small children's picture book called Are You With Me? She said she wrote it with her boys. She said it helped them process the loss of their father. She appeared on Utah television in April 2023 to promote it, warm, composed, maternal. She told a local news program that Eric was still present in a different way. She told NPR member station KPCW that writing it brought a little peace. The true crime community noticed, the national media noticed, and so did prosecutors. Because during the trial, something came out about that book. Jurors saw notes and text messages suggesting Kouri Richins was not actually the primary author of the book at all, according to Court TV's trial coverage. The grief memoir she'd built her post-Eric public identity around possibly wasn't even fully hers. And then came this, just 2 months after those book promotion appearances. In May 2023, Kouri Richins was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband. The grief book, the television interviews, the carefully constructed image of a widow holding it together for her boys. All of it, prosecutors argued, was cover. During the investigation, authorities also uncovered something Kouri didn't expect. The moment she learned Eric had quietly removed her from his estate, she reportedly punched his sister, Katie Richins Benson, in the neck and face. The woman who would later publish a book about healing from loss. The defense maintained throughout the trial that the evidence was circumstantial, that no one could prove definitively how Eric ingested the fentanyl. They presented no witnesses. Kouri did not testify. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Less than 3 hours. After 3 weeks of testimony and more than 40 witnesses, they reached their verdict in the time it takes to watch a movie. On March 16, 2026, after a 3-week trial in Park City, Utah, Kouri Richins was found guilty on all counts. Aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder for the Valentine's Day sandwich poisoning attempt, insurance fraud, forgery. All of it guilty, unanimous. And then came sentencing day. May 13, 2026. The date was not random. It was what would have been Eric Richins' 44th birthday. According to CNN, Judge Richard M. Razik handed down the maximum, life in prison without the possibility of parole, consecutive sentences on every additional count, no chance of freedom, ever. In explaining his decision, Judge M. Razik said, and I'm paraphrasing here, Kouri Richins attempted to murder her husband, and when that first attempt failed on Valentine's Day, she did not stop. She spent the next 17 days preparing to try again, and she succeeded. A person capable of that, he said, is simply too dangerous to ever be free. At sentencing, Kouri spoke for about 30 minutes. She addressed her sons. She maintained her innocence. She said the idea that she murdered their father was completely wrong, an absolute lie. Her family rallied around her. Her brother told the court they couldn't say with certainty what happened to Eric, but they were certain Kouri didn't do it. And then the boys' statements were read aloud by therapists because the boys would not speak for themselves. One of those children, now 13 years old, wrote, "You took away everything from me and my brothers. I don't want you out of jail because I will not feel safe if you are out." His little brother wrote, "I'm afraid if she gets out, she will come after me and my brothers, my whole family." These are Eric Richins' children. Children who should be shooting hoops with their dad on his birthday. Children who should be making him a card or burning his pancakes on a Saturday morning or texting him from school. Instead, on what would have been his 44th birthday, they were watching their mother go to prison for the rest of her life for killing him. According to CBS News, Kouri's defense attorneys have announced plans to appeal the conviction and file a motion for a new trial. She also faces a separate case, 26 additional felony charges related to years of alleged financial fraud, including mortgage fraud, money laundering, and more. That case has not yet gone to trial. The legal chapter is not fully closed. But for Eric Richins, For this quiet, hard-working man who built something with his hands and loved his boys and deserved to grow old, there is no more chapter. Eric Richins was 39 years old. He worked hard, loved his family, and trusted the person who was supposed to be his partner. He deserved to see his sons grow up. He deserved to celebrate 44 and 54 and beyond. This video is for him and for the 3 boys who will carry his name forward. Before you go, drop your thoughts in the comments. 3 weeks of testimony, more than 40 witnesses, and the jury needed less than 3 hours. Do you think justice was fully served for Eric Richins, or does something about this case still sit uneasy with you? Let me know below.